Let's speak a little bit about the economics of this huge project, and I can't understate huge. It really is expected to be the biggest airport on the planet and handle the most traffic. Did Turkey really need this?
It's a question of where Turkey plans to be in the future. There's a statistic out that I just read recently. Half of Fortune 500 companies are within a 10-mile radius of a hub international airport. That means people want to be near large hubs. So, I mean, if Turkey wants to be as ambitious as it already is, if it wants to fulfill its ambitions in being a regional economic powerhouse, then I think this was the right move. The current airport, as you probably have experienced, is bursting at the seams. I mean, they needed a new airport. Larger cities like New York and Los Angeles have 5, 6, 7 airports within a 100-mile radius. Istanbul does not. So this was, I think, a much-needed addition. There
had been some criticism, though, that this project, as you well know, was actually rushed. I mean, cities as important as even Berlin, some have made a joke of Berlin's new airport, but that's taken upwards of a decade just to get some of the primary stages finished. Turkey wanted this finished within 3 years. Was that a little overly ambitious, or was it actually realistic?
I mean, like I said, the current situation at the current airport is 120% capacity. It's really, I mean, you land at the airport and spend an hour trying to get to the terminal because there's so many flights landing and taking off. I think this airport was late by 5 years, you know? I mean, it should have been thought of and implemented many, many years ago, and I think it couldn't have come at a sooner time.
Have you seen it?
I have not seen it. I've seen it in person. I have not been in the terminal yet, but I've seen it from the outside. And like you said, there's a lot of rushing going on trying to complete construction because it's such a large project. So we'll see when it's finished how it looks.
So, I mean, how realistic are expectations for the kind of growth and the economic financial goals that have been laid out for this airport? What kind of benefit can it really bring?
I think they're realistic in that if you think about it, I mean, Istanbul is and has been a natural location for such a hub. I mean, we're 9 hours from New York, we're 9 hours from Shanghai. We're in the middle of everything. I think 80% of the world's population lives within an 11-hour flight of Istanbul. And that no other city can boast such a position, not Tokyo, not New York, anywhere. So I think we're very lucky in that sense to be in such a location.
What about some of the critics, though, who've said it's part of this overly ambitious general national plan to build these massive, massive infrastructure projects? At least that's what critics say, that they're overly ambitious. Too much money has been spent. But others who support it say this is what Turkey needs. This is what really brings it into the 21st century and helps it compete with the world's biggest economies.
I mean, infrastructure projects are always contentious. This specific project has had zero government investment. So it's a complete private investment by a group of investors, and it has 5, I believe, and those investors also pay the government back, I think, $20 billion over the next few years. So it's a net zero outlay from the government at this point. But if you want to play with the big boys, you have to kind of, you have to play big here. This is a very big project. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, I was in Dubai 15 years ago, or 12 years ago, and there was nothing in Dubai, as you know. I was in Shenzhen 15 years ago, and there was nothing practically, and it's grown, 10, 20 times what it is now. So if you want, like I said, if that's a goal of yours to grow ambitiously, you have to grow, you have to invest in large projects. So I understand the criticism, and there's obviously, there's some reasoning behind that, and those who support this project have these things to say about it. So,
talk about this with me if you can. I know this is not your specific area of expertise, but you will be aware of some of the, let's call them teething pains of opening a project like this. Because some of our viewers are obviously going to be those international travelers that have to pass through this airport or land and disembark at this airport. Talk about some of the teething pains they might be dealing with. What could be some of the complications that will still need to be fine-tuned?
Well, I think a project that's as ambitious as this, like you said, will have teething pains. I think it'll be several months before all the lounges are completed. It'll be several months before, there are kinks in every system that come out. I'm trying to think offhand of which airports I've been to that have had that recently. I can't imagine. I've been to many, 80 plus countries, but I can't remember one of those specific incidents. But the one thing that pops out is there are a very limited number of flights initially for the first month. I think at the end of December, the majority of the flights come online. So up until then, if you need a connection from this new airport, you're not going to have one until December, essentially. So it won't really be the hub that we're talking about until December.
Okay.
Until the other things.
We'll have to see how those, because that's another issue with this airport that some have complained about. It's not atypical of a lot of major cities that have their major airports far from the city center.
Right.
This one, the Istanbul new airport, is significantly further out than the major international airport here, Ataturk, which people are used to. So you're talking about people coming from the city center, and in non-peak hours, it's a 25-minute taxi ride into where you need to be or back out to the airport. Now they might be looking at some serious commute time.
I mean, JFK in New York City is about an hour outside of Manhattan. It has been that way. I'm a New Yorker, so I've lived there for 30 years, my entire life. It's always been an hour. There's always been traffic. There's always been construction. The Van Wyck Expressway, famous for these type of things. It happens. These things happen. The Shanghai airport is very far from the city center, but it's only a 6-minute ride with the high-speed train, bullet train, exactly. So Istanbul needs to come up with a creative solution to this problem. And hopefully it will be mass transit. I mean, the Copenhagen airport is 5 minutes from the city center. That's right, it's true. But Copenhagen is nowhere near as busy as Istanbul is. We're talking about, 1/20th the size of Istanbul.
Because I think Istanbul, what do we call them? Istanbulus? That's a very strange word. But yeah, I think people in Istanbul and travelers coming here have been very spoiled with the fact that the major airport is so easy to access. But the reality is the distance of this new one is pretty much in line with most major cities around the world. And as well, when you point out a city like New York, I mean, it's a messy 1 hour getting out there.
It is.
The public transport is very complicated, and the plan here is to actually get a new, shiny new metro line built, going directly from the city center out to the airport. When are we expecting those massive infrastructure projects to actually be finished?
I think they're talking about 2020 for the first ones to come online. I think it's going to take some time, like you said. I mean, while you were speaking, I was thinking about the 1 hour I said. The 1 hour for JFK is an hour in traffic with your car. If you want to take the subway, mass transit, we're talking about 2 hours. That's the A train. Literally, it takes 2 hours from central Manhattan to get to JFK, and you have to switch twice to do that. So there is no. So unlike there are many European, like the Amsterdam airport Schiphol is very good in that. But this Istanbul is not. And one of the things that you said, we're spoiled, and the reason is because this airport was built in the middle of nowhere when it was built.
When it was built.
But now it's in the middle of the city.
Okay, Taha, we're going to have to leave it there.